Recording in progress.
Okay, so as we said yesterday, the learning should be L'zech Nishmas, all those that were killed, all those that are out there to bring them home, and protection of the soldiers, and Moshe ben Achon Alevi, and the same the ones that we do every day. So we're up to Daf Samuch Hey Amid Beis. 5 words from the bottom. So just to review what we're talking about, in general, in Eid Echad does not have nemanis when it comes to requiring a carbon. But we had 2 halachas. One is that if an Eid Echad goes over to you and says that you ate chaylev and you're quiet, so shtika kahida, so his testimony with you're quiet, you chayv a carbon. Then a second statement, an Eid Echad comes and says your taharas are tameh, and you can't eat them in a state of tahara, and you're quiet, we believe him, and you have to treat it that way. And now the third statement. Amar Abaya, Amar le'eid echad. One aid says, Sharcha nirva. One aid says that your shar was with a human being. Sharcha nirva. And therefore, it's okay, what does it matter? So it can't be, I'm sorry? It's not fit for a carbon. It's not fit for a carbon. Meaning he's saying, Sharcha nirva, and if you ever want to make this a carbon, you're not able to. Okay. And that person's quiet. Neman. It's the basic thing over and over again, and that is you have an Eid Echad with the other person being quiet. We assume his silence is acceptance. Shtika ka'ida, and we accept it. V'tanatuna. Well, the Gemara is going to explain that when someone makes an accusation against you that affects halacha, it affects your ability to use certain items, you better respond. Quiet is not an option. I guess, listen, there is a concept like, what do I have to answer you for? But if the guy is accusing, you're saying your animal is possible for a carbon, and you ever want to use it as a carbon, you got to speak up. So, Vitana Tuna, and I have a brisa that backs it up, that if you're quiet in such a scenario, shtika kahida. Because what does the brisa say? Shenev de be'avera, the brisa is listing animals that are not fit for a carbon, and one of them is that a person lived with it. So it's an ev de be'avera. The shehemis, or it killed a person. Now, how do you know that this happens? It says the brisa, api eid echad, or api bailim, either based on one witness or based on the owner's admission. Now, so the question is, Hi api eid echad hechidami. What's the case? I understand the owner's admission. The owner comes forward and says, my animal didn't have avera, so you can't use it as a carbon. But what does it mean that in eid echad? What's the scenario? Meaning, think about it. The eid echad says that your animal, lived with a person, or a person lived with an animal. So it's possible carbon. So we said he's Neman. Well, what's the case? If you're fighting against him, he's not Neman. If you verbally agree with him, that's Api Bailim. I already have Api Bailim in the Brisa. So what's the scenario where it's Api Eidim, Api Eid Echad? It must be the Eid Echad says your animal did this, and you're quiet. Because again, it can't be you fight against him, because if you fight against him, you beat him. It can't be that you're verbally agreeing with him, because then that's not Api Eid Echad, that's Api Bailim. It must be Api Eid Echad, where the Eid Echad said this, and you're quiet. So you see, that the owner being quiet is shtika kihoida. The Gemara says, it must be that the bailim are quiet and you see shtika kihoida. And the basic premise of all these 3 scenarios is that the owner being quiet is not. There's 2 ways to look at it. You could say that he's agreeing with him, or you could say sort of my father was learning to this, and maybe he's quiet because he's just like, what do I have to talk to you? Like, whatever, I'm not going to start fighting with this guy. So you see from this sugya that the owner being quiet is shtika kahida. Now the question, why do you need all 3 cases? They're all basically telling you the same thing. So you have the first case, which is you ate chaylev. The second case of your taharis or tameh, and the third case is that your animal is possible for a carbon. So, and we need all 3 cases. So the Gemara is going to explain how each case, you being quiet, is a bigger chiddush. I'll sort of say it outside. I'll say it outside. I'll say this. The first case, when someone says you ate chaylev, he's making a direct accusation against you. You being quiet, that's something, because you should really speak up. See, the second case, you told me that my taharis are tameh. Yeah. So what does that mean for me? It means I could eat them only when I'm tameh. So you're basically saying, not that I have to throw them out, but you're basically saying these food items can only be used 40% of the time. So I'm quiet. Now, I could look at that being quiet as like, listen, what am I going to fight with this guy for? it's not like I'm going to start fighting and saying it's not even such a big deal. Like there's a svara to say that I'm not going to fight with someone. First of all, I don't think he's telling the truth. But even if he's lying, I'm going to start fighting with him when it's not a big deal anyway. So I'll just probably, even from his accusation, I'll just eat in a state of tahara. It's not a big deal. So maybe the reason why the guy didn't fight back is not because shtika koida, because he says to himself, like, I'm going to start fighting this guy because so he's telling me I can only eat my taharis when I'm tameh, which is half the month I'm tameh, half the month I'm tahar. So okay, fine. So I'll eat it when I'm tameh. Make the guy crazy. I'll avoid this guy. Sometimes it's not worth the fight. Kamash no shtika goida. And the last one is the biggest chiddush, because I'm telling you, your animal is possible for a carbon. What's the likelihood that you're going to make that animal a carbon? 10%. It's not like it's a carbon now. I just go over to Gavin and say, hey, one of your animals in your flock, it's possible for a carbon. So maybe the fact that he's quiet is not because he agrees with me, because I'm going to start fighting with this guy. 90% chance I'm not going to make it a carbon anyways. It's a moot point. So we start fighting with this guy and saying, you're a liar, and how do you know? And, So it's like less chiddush, bigger chiddush, biggest chiddush. That again, the being quiet is an admission, because you could see that as it's getting less likely to be a halachic problem, you could see someone saying, well, it's not worth the headache of fighting with the guy. Kamash no shtika keidah. That's the chiddush of the Gemara. Tzricha. I need all three cases. Yash minach kamaisa, because if you only had the first case where the guy accused him of eating chaylev, he loved the kimbel ben Asher David chulum bazar lev amaisi. Listen, the guy's going to bring a carbon. The guy ends up bringing a carbon for this. If he wasn't telling the truth, he wouldn't bring a carbon if it wasn't necessary. Meaning, the guy should have spoke up, and the fact that he didn't is an admission of guilt. But in the second case, where the guy says your tahar foods became tameh, maybe the reason why he's quiet is not an admission of guilt. Perhaps the reason why he's quiet is not an admission. He's going to say, look, I'm going to fight with this guy, so I'll just eat it when I'm tameh anyway, so to avoid making the guy crazy. So maybe the reason why I'm doing this is not an admission of guilt. He's just saying, it's not the end of the world anyway. I'm going to start fighting this guy because he tells me I could only eat it 60% of the month and not 100%. No. So therefore, the quiet is not a mission of guilt. Perhaps it's just avoiding confrontation when it's unnecessary. The last case, now, if I only had the second case, I'd say, listen, you got to speak up. He's telling you, according to his accusations, you can't eat it when you're tahar. That's something. At least it's 40% of the month, 50%, whatever it is. But the last case where he says that your animal is possible for a carbon, perhaps the reason why he's quiet is because he says to himself, what's the likelihood I'm going to make this a carbon anyway? So I'm going to start fighting with this guy when it's not relevant. So maybe his quiet, his shtika is not kahidog. Tzricha, kamash malon, it is. Okay. Okay, this is a big sugya that's going to take us to the next Amid. It's interesting. Maisa in this Gemara. Big sugya is as follows. Yiboilu have a kasha. Yeah. Yiboilu have a kasha. Ishtoi zinsoi be'ed echad v'shoisik mahu. A guy comes forward. I talked about this yesterday a little bit. A guy comes forward and he says, your wife committed adultery. He's the only one who knows. It's an eid echad. The question is, do you have to believe him? Now, let me explain this. This is important. If you do believe the guy, let's say, forget about it, you believe him, like in your heart you believe him, then it's a problem. Then that's a problem. According to Rishonim, it's working fundamentals of Shavia Nasha Chatich D'Isura. If you believe that your wife committed adultery, not that you have to, but once you do believe it, then it creates halachic problems, because from your perspective, she did something that ends in the marriage. So you're not allowed to be with her anymore. But that's sort of your choice. Yeah. So let's go through the three extremes. You just, for whatever reason, believe with 100% emunah that she did this, that's a problem. That's one extreme. Two witnesses come forward and says, we saw her commit adultery. You're like, I don't believe it. Doesn't matter. Two witnesses. Here's the kasha. One witness comes forward. Believe him or not, is one witness enough? Is one witness enough? So Taisus asks a very obvious question, which is, I thought we paskin ein davar sheva erev pachas b'sham. I thought you always need two. Again, if you believe the guy, but that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about, is one witness enough on his own? So if you look at Taisus, the first Taisus, Amar Abaya, he tema One second. It's really in the next Taisus, and it's more of an agavdik. If you look in the next Taisus, the basic shita is it's an eid echad with shtika kahida. So it's not. So the question is, we know that you need two eidim. The question is, I have one eid, and then you're quiet. Is that enough? That's the Gemara's kasha. So that's the sugi over here. If you have one eid who says your wife committed adultery, and you're shaisik, so do we say one eid with shtika kahida makes it the marriage is off, or you say no, you need two eidim?
It's like the count.
Well, yeah, a little bit. But the difference is over here it's an erva. Over there it's more isurim because it's an animal, so it's not erva. So that's the Gemara's kasha. So you have one eid who says that she committed adultery, so the marriage is off. You have to divorce her, and you're shaisik. Do we say one eid with shaisik is equal to two eidim? That's the Gemara's kasha. Or do you say no? You don't have to believe her. If you believe her, that's a different story, but you don't have to. So it's a machlokes. Iboilu have a kasha. Ishtoi zinsa be'eid echad. You have one witness that says that the husband, your wife committed adultery. V'shaisik, and the husband is also quiet. So you have eid echad and shtika gaida. Mahu, what is the halacha? Does this marriage have to be over? So Amr Abaya Neman. Abaya says yes. That's it. Meaning, according to Abaya, you either need two witnesses or one witness and shtika gaida. Rava says no, and this is how we paskin. We paskin like Rava. Rava Amar Einoy Neman. Have a davar shebe'erva, vein davar shebe'erva pachas b'shnayim. Rava says there's no such thing as a davar shebe'erva less than two. Again, as we'll see in a moment, if you believe the guy, then it's other problems, but that's not mitzad edus. That's mitzad shavi anavsha chaticha d'isura. A person could just make something usher to himself. But Rava's point is, without two witnesses, you do not have to believe them. I don't care if you're shaisik; it doesn't matter. You need two. Okay. So Amr Abaya mina aminullah. How do I know?
Hold on. So if I decide that this is true.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter to me.
And now it could be you need some raglayim l'davar to make your nether like work a little bit better, but yeah, you might according to some Rishonim, you might have to have some reason to believe that. Let's say you have a reason in your head. It's not proven to be accurate, but in your head, you have a conspiracy. You think that they're putting chazer in the thing, even though the mashgiach says it's not true. Yeah, that's asuri to you, but not to anyone else.
But it's mom shows it to me.
Yeah, because of another. You can make anything also to you. Yeah. To you it's also. Yeah. Mitzad nedarim. So, Amr Abaya mina aminol. How do I know that one witness is enough to aser a marriage? So, there was a blind person who used to learn. He used to repeat the text in front of Mar Shmuel. So, there was a blind person. One day he was late and he didn't come to Beis Medrash. So Shmuel sent a messenger to find him. Now, so basically they missed each other. The blind person had left his house and was going to the Beis Medrash. He was going from the Beis Medrash to the blind person's house, but they went on different roads. So the guy shows up to the blind person's house when the blind person's wife expects no one to be there, because the husband just left Beis Medrash for the week. She didn't realize that someone would be showing up to look for him.
Again, do that again.
She sent the blind person left to the Beis Medrash, and at the same time, Shmuel sent someone to go to the blind person's house to go get him. But they went on different roads. So he shows up at her house when she expects no one being there, and she's supposedly committing adultery at the time. So, when the shliach comes to the blind person's house and he doesn't find there, Amr Ishtay Zinsa, he says to the blind person, I saw your wife was committing adultery when I got there. So, so they ask Shmuel, what's the halacha? He says, if you trust the shliach and the marriage, topic, and if not. Now, what does it mean to trust? Now, there's two approaches. I'll say them outside and we'll see it inside. There's two different options of what does it mean trust. Trust could mean, is another way of saying, is he a kosher aid? Trust meaning, is he a ganef? Is he a gazlan? Is he a trustworthy guy? He's a kosher aid. If he's a kosher aid echad's enough. That would be a proof eid echad is enough. The response to get out of this is to say no. Really, eid echad's not enough. But Shmuel is saying, do you trust him? Meaning, not is he a kosher aid. Do you believe his story? Because as I said before, if you believe his story, then you have to end the marriage, even though mitzad nidarim, mitzad, even if there's no, you don't have to believe the story, but if you personally believe the story. So when Shmuel said, do you trust the guy? Did he mean, is he a kosher eid? Because if he's a kosher eid, then eid echad with shtika is enough. That's a bias proof. Rava will respond, no, when he said, do you trust him? He doesn't mean, is he a kosher eid? He's saying like this, eid echad's not enough, unless you believe it. You believe it? Like that could be. So the Gemara says, "My love, Abaye says, is Shmuel not saying? Do you trust him? Meaning, is he a apostle? Or is he a kosher? If he's a kosher, that's it. The Rava responds, "Do you believe him like he's two people?" Rava's point is no. Eid echad is not enough. But Shmuel is now telling you a new concept, which is, although Eid echad is not enough, if you believe the story, then from your perspective it happened, then it works, I don't know, in the words of Nidarim, Shabi Nashachati Chadisurim, there's such a concept that if you believe it, then you shouldn't be with such a woman. Not that you have to believe it, but if you do believe it. Okay. Amr Abaya, Mina Aminullah. So now Abaya is going to prove this from a very lengthy story that this part of the story seems like completely irrelevant, but just I'll point out where in the story this is. So Abaya says like this, Mina, how do I know that Eid Echad is believed? Titania. Ma'isa b'Yanei HaMelech. Yanei HaMelech was a very bad person. And this is his, not origin story, because he was already kind of bad, but this is where he really became bad. Yanei killed all the Rabbanim. All of them, except for Shimon ben Shetach.
That's because of his son.
Brother-in-law.
Brother.
He wanted to kill Shimon ben Shetach, but his wife, Shimon's sister, saved him. Hid him and saved him. But you can imagine, it's sort of like a little bit what we go through now, what we've gone through the past week. It's sort of like, can you imagine like what that world was like when all the Rabbanim were killed? Like, we don't think in these terms because we never thought in like these type of terms before. We're not like think about it. So he says like this: the Tanya, Naisa b'Yanei HaMelech shehalach l'kuchem b'mimra. Yanai was a king. He was a kohen also, by the way. He was a kohen. He was also a king, which was already not good, but he forced himself to be king. But the story goes, the Yanei HaMelech, Shahalach l'kuchila shebamidbar, he went to a certain area in the desert, v'kiva sham shishim krachim, and he had a war, and he conquered 60 cities. So he comes back with a victorious war. On his way back, he wants to celebrate. He won the war. So he gathers all the Rabbanim together. He said, our fathers used to eat maluchim. Maluchim was a type of herb. Okay. It was, I guess, for poor people. So he said they used to eat that herb when they built the Beis HaMikdash. We should have a meal, a chash of a meal, but we should eat at this part of the story, I'm sure hashkafically is an element. I'm not sure exactly what the meaning of this part is, but he said, let's have a meal to celebrate it, but we'll eat the old herbs that we used to eat. And they serve maluchim on tables of gold. And they ate it. Okay, fine.
Nostalgia, isn't that nostalgia?
Yeah, but I'm saying he's serving poor herbs on a golden table. Okay. He's a little erratic. Anyway, now at this meal you have all the Rabbanim, and you have this one guy, Ish Leitz Lev Ra'u B'lial, a kaifer, an evil man, okay, and a non-believer. And what's his name? Eliezer ben Pu'ira Shmai. This evil person named Eliezer ben Pu'ira. So this person says to Yanei HaMelech, he says, the rabbis don't like you. He says at the meal, he says, these rabbis don't really, they're not really happy for you. So Yanai says, Yanai said, what do I do? How do I know? So he says, he says, you're a king, which you really shouldn't be. He said, but you're a kohen. Make yourself a kohen gadol. They'll tell you if they really respect you then. See if they're happy that you're kohen gadol. Kohen gadol, right? So make yourself a kohen gadol, and we'll see how the rabbis respond to you. We'll see how they actually feel about you. He wasn't worthy of being kohen gadol. So he told the rabbis at the meal, I'm the new kohen gadol. There was an older person there, Yehuda ben Gedidia Shemai, and his name was Yehuda ben Gedidia. Yehuda ben Gedidia Yanei HaMelech. Yehuda ben Gedidia said to Yanei HaMelech, Ravlach Keser Malchus, isn't it enough that you're king? You need to be kohen gadol too. And he objected to him being kohen gadol. Okay. Hanach l'keser melucha l'zayir shel Aaron. Leave the Kohen Gadol for the real Kohanim. You're already king. That's enough. Now, why did he object? He didn't just object. I thought Yana is a king. Yana is a Kohen. So why can't he be? He said you should leave the Kohen Gadol for the real Kohanim. What does it mean? Because people had said that his mom was captured before she gave birth to him. Now, if she got captured, we assume that, God forbid, she was with the captors, who are Goyim, which means she's Pasal Kahuna. She's Pasal Kahuna, that means the children are not Kohanim, the Chalal. So basically, because there was a question of his Kohanic lineage, he said maybe let someone else be Kohen. Okay. So that's, by the way, this is the point. This is the point of the story. I don't know, he's trying to paskin. He was trying to, I don't know, this is chaos anyway. You have a king who's a Russia who wants to be a Kohen Gadol when he's not worthy of being Kohen Gadol. So anyway, so he said, you shouldn't be a Kohen Gadol because there was a question of your mom's lineage. But at the end of the day, they looked into it and they could not find out whether it was true. Turned out it was a false accusation. Okay, fine. But that's okay. So that was the case. They looked into it. It turned out it was a false accusation. Turns out they didn't blow up the hospital. Right? It was false accusations. And but at the end of the day, but Yana was already enraged, because he did not like that they were questioning his worthy of being Kohen Gadolness. Now, just to end the story, but we'll come back to this point of why did they originally think that his mom, that he is puzzle for kahuna, and why did they say that he is kosher for kahuna? But let's just finish off the story. That's if they talk that way about a regular guy. You're the melech and Kohen Gadol, and they're questioning you. You're going to let them talk like that to you? So he says, "Kachu dincha." So this is your judgment. This is how they talk about you. So Yana said, "What do you want me to do?" So Eliezer said, "Kill them. Kill all the rabbis." Okay. So Yana said, "What about the Torah? We're going to be with Torah. You kill all the rabbis. What's going to be with Torah?" So he says. So Eliezer responded, "There's a scroll. There's a Torah scroll. Let anyone who wants to read. What do you need the rabbis for? The Torah is written down. Go learn it. They'll have other rabbis." Now, Apikarsis went into Yanai's mind because he should have responded. Yana should have responded, even with your svara of killing the rabbis won't destroy Torah because other people will learn in the future. That's only true for the written Torah. The oral Torah wasn't written down. You lose the oral Torah. You can't just figure that out. So that's why it was apikarsis. Okay. The evil came out of Elizabeth and they executed all the Rabbanim. And the world was empty of Torah knowledge. Until Shimon ben Shetach came and returned the crown back and brought the Torah back. Okay. So now that's the story. So the question is, why originally did they say that Yana is puzzle for kahuna, and then they said he's kashal for kahuna? What was the change? Like what was the taina originally, and then what changed? Hechidami, what happened? Now again, why do we say we said that originally he's puzzle kahuna because we said there was an accusation that his mom was taken captive before he gave birth. So what's the case? If there's two witnesses that says that they saw her taken captive, and then so therefore we thought that. So two witnesses say she was taken captive, so we thought she's pasal kuna. So why do we change our mind? Because in two second witnesses, Reuben and Shimon says that she was taken captive, pasal kuna. Then Shimon and Levi and Yehuda come and say, no, she wasn't. The question is, if you have 2 against 2, why are you listening to the lenient one? Go with the strict one, right? If the first 2 witnesses say that she's pasal kahuna, and that's why you thought she was pasal kahuna, but then 2 more witnesses come and say she's not pasal kahuna, so we're going to listen to the second set of 2. Why listen to the second set of 2 more than the first set of 2? The Gemara says, why would we change our mind based on that? It was one witness, meaning one witness came forward and said that she was captured in pasal kahuna. Boom. We listened to them. Notice, we listened to Inei Echad. And then what happened? Another witness came forward and disagreed. So now it's 1 against 1. They cancel each other out. But had they not canceling each other out, we would listen to Eid Echad. This is a proof to Abaya that an Eid Echad is Neman if there's Shtika Kaida. And the only reason why we retracted our view was because another witness came forward, but had the second single witness not come forward, it would just be a single witness saying that she's pasakuna, we would believe it. So you see, Eid Echad is something even by Arayas. That's the Gemara's response. So the Gemara has a couple of answers. No. Okay, we're trying to figure out what originally was the story and why they retracted their view. We said it can't be that two said she's pasakuna and then two said she's not pasakuna, because then why would we retract our view? It goes strict. The answer is it's a single witness said she's pasakuna. We believe a single witness proof. Then another witness come forward and said no, so they cancel each other out. But had that not happened, we would have just listened to one witness. I guess there's shtika also. You'd have to interpret that there was shtika as well.
Who would say that?
I don't know. I guess that's what you have to say. I guess that's what you have to say. I guess she was quiet. That's what you'd have to say. According to Taisus, you'd have to interpret the Shtika as well. So the Gemara says no. Rava lo'olam trei utrei. The case is as follows. It's not a case of a single witness. It's not related to our sugi at all. It's two witnesses. Reuven and Shimon say they saw her taken captive on Monday morning in New York. Then Levi Yehuda come forward and say you're wrong. So we said a question: why would we go with the second set of witnesses over the first? So this is the basic first parak of Maseches Makos. There's a concept called Eid Zoyman. Eid Zoyman means that you could disprove. You see, the second set of witnesses, it's not that they're just disagreeing, because if you have two people say one thing and then the two people say another thing, we're not going to go with one or the other. It's the second set of witnesses prove that the first set of witnesses were liars. It's not just that they're attacking their story. They're saying, you're saying you saw her take captive Monday morning in New York. You were with us Monday morning in New York, and we weren't there. We were not Monday morning. We were in Idaho. Point is, the reason why we listened to the second set of witnesses is because the second set of witnesses didn't just have a different story. They disproved the first set of witnesses. Okay, so it's not Eid Echad at all. It's two Eidim. Or another pshat is that the second set of witnesses, they disproved the story in another way. The first set of witnesses said that she was taken captive. The second set of witnesses say, we know she was taken captive, but she was freed. What happened was the Jews with Yanai's mother broke in, got her out, and put a slave in her place. So the captors didn't notice that the numbers were less. So the second set of witnesses explained to him, we know that she was taken captured, but she was saved also. So because the second set of witnesses acknowledge the first story, but clarify it, we're going to go with the second set of witnesses. Okay. Fine. Amarava, go to the next page.
Wouldn't that have been a story that everyone wrote about?
Maybe the Mossad did it. I'm saying, I don't know, it was the Jewish version of the Mossad. So now this next Gemara is long. It's a long proof. You got to just at the end, we'll come back to this. Again, we're trying to prove, Rav is talking now, so Rav is trying to prove that an Eid Echad is nothing when it comes to Arayas. Now Rav says, Mina Aminullah, how do I know this? Now, we are going to go down a long rabbit hole of a very long brisa with back and forth, and then eventually we'll come back to this sugya. Okay, here's the concept. Titnan. Okay, Mishnah goes like this. Rav Shimon, Maisa bisgura shel diskin biyavna, shoysemedis becheska shlema. Okay, you had a mikveh. You pick a mikveh in Queens. Yeah, chazaka that it's full. It's been checked. The rabbi checked it. Kosher. The rabbi checked it in the beginning of January. People have been using it. Chazaka that it's good. And then at some point, someone goes in and he starts measuring, and it's no longer good. So we don't know when that happened. So here's the problem. You hear him saying? It was Chazaka, January 1st, checked, kosher. March 1st, the guy goes into the mikveh and he looks around, he's like, there's not a lot of water here. And they check, no longer kosher. So the question is, what happened the last 2 months? Do we say the last 2 months all the tumah that you put in there is tahar, and it was kosher until today? Or do you say, no, it's been possible for 2 months? Machlokes tanoim. What this has to do with arayos, again, like I said, we'll come back to this at the very end of the Yamid. Amrav Shimon, so Rav Tarfon has a very lenient view. Rav Tarfon says, all items that became tahar in the mikvah, Rav Tarfon mitar. The mikvah was kosher. You could assume it was kosher. It was kosher. So anything that was placed in the mikvah, you could assume was kosher. Rav Akiva mitama. It's opposite of normal. Rav Tarfon is usually very strict, and Rav Akiva is usually very lenient. But Rav Akiva says no, everything is tamah. Okay. So why do they say what they say? Rav Tarfon mikvah zeh b'cheska shalom u'amir. Rav Tarfon says it was checked. There's a chazaka that the mikvah was good. So you could assume that it was good until you're proven otherwise. So Rav Tarfon says, don't make it not good. It was good until proven otherwise. It had a chazaka that it was good. What is Rav Akiva's response? Because he's very strict. Rav Akiva, Rav Akiva responds like this. You have a woman who goes into the mikveh. Is she tahar or tameh before she goes into the mikveh? She's tameh. So you're saying, there's a chazkas tahara, that the mikveh was chazkas good, but the person going into it was chazkas tameh. You need to remove that tumah. You can't do it anymore. So if you look about it from the perspective of the mikveh was proven to be good, but the person going into it was proven to be bad. So therefore, Rav Akiva says, if the guy going into it is a chazkas tameh, I don't have enough to remove that. Rav Tarfon says, but the mikveh itself is a chazkas tahara. I don't have enough to remove that. And they're banging each other's head, okay? And they're banging into each other. So, Amr of Tarfon, Mashal lo'omed u'makriv agam mizrach. So basically, we have, in other words, we don't know what happened. There was a mess up.
Rabbi is focusing on the person, Rabbi Tarfon is focusing on the object.
Correct. So, Amr of Tarfon, Mashal lo'omed u'makriv agam mizrach. Rav Tarfon says, I think this is comparable to a kohen who is bringing stuff on the mizbeach. V'noidishu ben grusha ben chalutza. And you find out afterwards, right? The same way you've been using this mikveh for months, and then you find out afterwards the mikveh is no good. What happens if you have a kohen that's been serving the Beis Hamikdash for months, and they find out that his mom was a divorcee? It's not exactly the same. I know it's not the same, but he said you find out the mom was a divorcee. What's the halacha? The halacha is b'diavad it was fine. That's the halacha. If a person serves in the Beis Hamikdash, even though he shouldn't, but he finds out that his mom was a divorcee, so he's a chalal, b'diavad is fine. So Rav Tarfon says, so too over here. You found out the mikveh wasn't so good, b'diavad is fine. I would never think of these things as being comparisons, but that's Rav Tarfon's response. He says, shavadasik sheira. So too over here, the same applies to the mikveh. Right? Even though you now became known that the mikveh was tameh, there was no good. You look back, it's fine. B'diavad is fine.
The coin stuff going.
Well, he's got to stop in the future. The point is, if you find out the kohen's been serving the Beis Hamikdash for 2 months, and then you find out afterwards, hey, his mom was a divorcee, b'diavad is fine. So over here, if found out the mikveh was questionable, b'diavad is fine. That's Rav Tarfon's approach. Rav Akiva says, you want to compare it to a kohen? Okay, I'll play your game. I'm Rav Akiva. Let's say that same kohen, instead of being a chalal, you find out that he has a blemish. I don't know, you found out that he's missing a limb. I don't know, whatever. What's the halacha? No good. Well, see, that you found that there was a problem? No good. Found that mikvah is a problem? No good.
Separate. The halachas of a korban, is it ma'akev? In just the halachas of karbanos?
Yeah, no, it's ma'akev. No, but it's ma'akev. Right? If the kohen is a balmum, everything he did was puzzle. That's the point. So, they're for some reason comparing it to kahanim, where you find out that there are problems. So, if the kohen is a chalal, b'diavad it's fine what he did. If the kohen is a balmum, b'diavad no good. So, Rav Akiva says you want to compare it to that one, compare it to a balmum, and say everything he did in the past is puzzle, no good. You got to redo odpam. So, over here, everything done in the mikveh odpam. That's Rav Akiva's point.
Balmum's more like the mikveh because it could have been kosher beforehand, like the mikveh.
Well, so it's like it's. Oh, so that
Grusha's net was net.
Yeah, so it's interesting. So that's a good point too. So the Gemara says, Amr of Tarfin. So Rav Tarfin responds. So Rav Tarfin says, listen, this is intellectual honesty. Rav Tarfin says, Ata demisa lebalmum, you're comparing this mikvah to a kayin who is blemished. Ani demisi ben grushim and chalutza. I'm comparing the mikvah to a kayin that turns out his mom was a divorcee. Nir l'mi daimit. Let's just figure out who's right. Im daimit ben grushim and chalutza, nedenek ben grushim and chalutza. If it's more comparable, if this mikvah is more comparable to a kayin that's a chalal, we'll compare it to that. Im daimit balmum, nedenek balmum. If it's more comparable, so basically we've summed it down to like this. Question: the mikvah became puzzle. The question: what to do about the past? The kayin turns out to be puzzle. The question: what about the past? So there's two kahanim. There's a balmum, puzzle. Turns out he's a chalal, kosher, b'diavad. So just draw the line for the mikvah. Which one to which? So Akiva responds.
Again, Balmum goes through it again.
If the kayin turned out to be a balmum, everything he did in the past was puzzle.
Right.
So to the mikvah turned out to be blemished. Everything in the past was puzzle. Or if you compare Rav Akiva, or Rav Tarfon compares it to a kayin that turns out to be a chalal. Everything in the past is b'diavad kosher. So to this mikvah is a problem. Everything is b'diavad kosher. So which one do you compare it to? So Hischar Rav Akiva Lada. So Rav Akiva says, I'll tell you what I compare it to. Mikvah psula b'yachid. If a mikvah becomes puzzle, how many witnesses have to prove that a mikvah is puzzle? One. Right? If a rabbi goes in with a measuring and he proves that it's not the right size, puzzle. You don't need two witnesses. Single witness. Okay. How many witnesses do you need to disprove that a kayin has a blemish? One. You don't need two people to see he's missing an arm. One. So mikvah, puzzle with one. Blemish, puzzle with one. How many eidim do you need to disprove that a kayin's mom was a divorcee? It's erva, two. So to disprove the lineage of a kayin, you need two eidim. To disprove a kayin based on a balmum, you need one. To disprove a mikvah is one and one. So it's more comparable to being a balmum. By the way, this is the point of the sugya. That whatever the scenario is, that one aid is enough to disqualify a balmum of a kayin, but it's not enough to disqualify the lineage of a kayin to say that his mom was a divorcee.
That's why you need two?
That you need two for that, because it's arayas. That's why this sugya is being brought down. We'll come back to this. Okay. Another thing, Rav Akiva is going now. Rav Akiva is again, he feels that the mikvah is more comparable to a blemished kayin. First of all, you only need one witness by both. Keep going. Davar acher. Mikveh psula begufay, bamum psula begufay, va'echich ben grushim echalutza shepsula me'acherim. You know what's also comparable? The mikveh is a problem in the mikveh itself. The balmum is a problem in the kayin itself. The ben grushim echalutza is a problem with the kayin's mom. So I compare the mikveh to the problem in the mikveh is more comparable to a blemished kayin because it's a problem in the subject itself. It's another reason why it's comparable. Rav Tarfon said, you're right. Akiva, anyone who separates from you is like separating from life itself. He's made to Rav Akiva. So now here's the question. What's the point of this entire story? The point of this entire Maisa back and forth is that Rav Akiva said, to disqualify a kayin with a mum, you need one witness. To disqualify a kayin to say that he's a chalal, you need two. Okay, what's the case? Hi balmum sheposel b'yachid. We're saying right now that what works by a balmum does not work by a chalal. How many witnesses by a balmum? One. What's the case? So you come forward and say, I have a blemish. Am I agreeing with you? Am I fighting you? So I'm not fighting you, because if I'm fighting you, right? If you say, again, Eid Echad says that I have a blemish. I'm the kain. Am I agreeing with you? Am I shaisik? Am I fighting you? Now, if I'm fighting you, then why do we believe you? You say I have a balmum, and I say, no, I don't. So it should cancel each other out. It must be, I'm quiet, and it works. Shtika kaida, and you see shtika kaida works by a balmum, it does not work by a lineage. And therefore that's proof that by a lineage to pasel kahuna, which is arayis, you need to.
Clarification.
Yeah.
He's missing an arm.
Oh no, that's obviously a big one. What if it's he has internal bleeding? I don't know, like the doctor's saying that he's missing half of his liver is missing. I don't know, whatever. There are internal movement. I think obviously the hand would be pretty clear. The point is, so you're coming forward and saying that that I'm a Balmum, am I fighting you? Am I agreeing with you? I can't be fighting, because if I'm fighting you, it should cancel each other out. It must be I'm agreeing with you because shtika kahida. And what do you see? The eid echad and shtika kahida works by a mum. It does not work the passel from kahuna because it's arayis, and arayis you always need to. This is a proof to Rava that there's no such thing as an eid echad by arayis. That's the proof. The Gemara says, "Hi Balmum shepsula biyachi." The case where you disqualify a kohen with a Balmum hechidami. What's the case? If the kohen contradicts the witness and says, "No, I'm not blemished," mimihim, then why do you believe the guy? It's one against one. They should cancel each other out. Ella deshasik. It must be that the eid echad says you're blemished, and the kohen himself says you're shasik. He's quiet, and you see that he's believing the guy. And what do you see? That dafka works by a balmum. The kavasik ben grush chalutza the shasik ukatani mikveh psul biyachid balmum psul biyachid v'aychich ben grush chalutza shepsul b'shnayim. And you see that doesn't work by a ben grush chalutza. Why? Because eid echad and shtika is not enough by arayis. You need two. This is a proof to Rav. So Rav Abaye responds. Abaye says la'olam dekamachish le. Abaye says that's not the case at all. The case is not in Eid Echad and Shaisik. The case is, you come to me, I'm the Kohen, you say I have a blemish, and I say, no, I don't. And the halacha is, you're believed. But why? We cancel each other out. You want to know why? Because if I'm right, show me. It's not internal. It's taka, something you could see. The reason why that person is believed when the person, even if the person disagrees with him, is because that Eid Echad has something on him, which is evidence. Show me. The Gemara says, really, the Kohen is disagreeing with the witness, and still the witness is believed. So why is he believed? Because you say, if you're not blemished, take your shirt off. Take your shirt off. Right? You say that I'm, not me, you say someone is missing a part of the body, I don't know, missing Batesman, whatever, I don't know. He's missing a part of the body, that's not a blemish. The Kohen disagrees. It's not. We thought the case was. We're looking for a proof of Eid Echad and Shtika Kahida. We thought that's the case by a Balmum, which would not apply by Ben Grushim and Chalutza. The answer is that's not the case. The case is where Eid Echad comes and the Kohen disagrees. He fights him. It's not related to our sugi at all. So it's not Makasha. If you're telling me that I'm an Eid Echad, that I'm a mum, and I say, no, I'm not, what's the halacha? You're believed. Why are you believed? I'm fighting you. The answer is because you have an ace up your sleeve, which is, if you're not blemished, why don't you show us? And I'm like, I don't want to. I'm very shy. It's like, okay. So you have, that's the reason why you're believed. But it's not a case of Shtika Kaida at all. It's an Eid Echad fighting against Eid Echad, which works over there, but does not work by Arayas, says Abaya, because they're fighting. But had it been Shaisik, it would work.
The burden of proof is not on the Eid.
In this case, by a blemish. By a blemish.
We believe in burden of proof?
Yes, in general,
right,
but not here. Behind the study, and this is what it means. Mikveh psul beguve, balmum psul beguve, echi ben rishon shepsul ma'acher. Okay. Now, before we get to the Mishnah, let's just finish up the sugya. We'll do very quickly. We'll do this, and then we'll do the Mishnah, and then we'll stop. Very, very quickly. We said that if a kohen serves in the Beis Hamikdash and then they find out that he had a mum, it's puzzle, b'diavad. But if you find out that he's a chalal, b'diavad, it's fine. How do you know that? How do we know that that's true? The Gemara says, Ben Grusha ben Chalutza avesek sher minolin. How do I know that if a kohen is a chalal? Again, a chalal means that his mom was pasal kahuna and they had him. So the mom was a divorcee, they had him. He should not be serving in the Beis Hamikdash, but he did accidentally. The halacha is b'diavad, yotza what he did. How do I know that? So the Gemara says, Amar Rav Yidam Shmuel, Amar Kra. The pasuk says, "V'hoisa loy ulazarei acharav." The pasuk says, "You, Aaron, there is kahuna for you and your children, all of your children, meaning even chalalim b'diavad are your children. They're still kahanim. Bein zera kosher, bein zera pasal. B'diavad, they're your child, whether they're a good child, a bad child, they're still your child. Meaning, so the pasuk is saying that you're still a kohen. Should you be serving the Beis Hamikdash? No, but b'diavad, you're still a kohen." That's
how do you use a gezerah cost?
What?
Can you do like acts of kohanim?
He's not allowed to lechatchila, but if it's b'diavad, he's still a kohen. At the end of the day, he's still blood a kohen, right? He's still from his dad's a kohen. You go by he's still a kohen. And the pasuk says, "Haisa like zarei achrav." All of your children are going to be like you. Bein zera kosher, bein zera pasal. Whether they're kosher or not, they're b'diavad, still considered.
Gezerah Kosov, how can we do this to be comparable to the mikveh then? This is you can't use this as a raya for the mikveh.
Well, I think that's what maybe. Oh.
It's its own.
Oh, interesting.
Halacha.
Oh, interesting. That's a good point. I have to check that out. Okay, it's a good kasha. So the Gemara continues. Avuda Shmuel Amar, another source. Mehacha Baruch Hashem Chelo Upayu Dav Tirtzeh. Hashem says, bless his belongings and his karbanas. Chelo is even like a chalal. Afilu chulin shabai tirtzeh. The pasuk is saying even a chalal, even a kayin who's like a chal, who's like mundane, meaning his mom's a divorcee, tirtzeh, I'll accept it. Hashem is saying tirtzeh. Not I'll accept his karma. B'diavad. Another source of Yanei Mehacha. The pasuk says that you shall go to the kain who's in those days. The famous question. It's the famous kasha. You're going to go to the kain who lives in your times. I'm supposed to go to a kain who doesn't live in my times. Well, am I supposed to go to a kain from 300 years ago? What does it mean? It means bidi eved. If he's a kain in your days, he's a kain. Meaning bidi eved. The Gemara says the pasuk is saying go to kain in your days, even if he's not a kosher kain. Bidi eved. It's interesting. Again, you can't do l'chachila, but if he's the only one, that's a good question. Maybe from this makar, it seems to be that way. I'll have to try to check that out. The last one is that's only true for a kayin who's a chal. Let's say the kayin finds out he's blemished. We say b'di'evet everything he did was puzzle. So, Balmum da Avedasa Psul Mana. How do I know that if a kohen who's blemished served in the Beis Hamikdash b'di'evet it's possible? Amar Ravida Amar Shmuel Damar Kra. The pasuk says Lachein Amar Hineni Noisin Loi Esbrisi Shalom. The pasuk says that I give my covenant of peace to Klal Yisrael, to the kohen Shalom. Shalom means peace. Without a vav, you know what Shalom is? Shalem, complete. A kohen has to be Shalem. A kohen cannot be missing. He has to be Shalem. So the pasuk says that I give the kehanim the covenant of peace. Take out the vav and read it as shalem. The kohen has to be complete. If the kohen is a blemish, no good. Now let me ask you a question. The Gemara says hashalom ksib, but there's a vav there. This is what we say. The answer is Amar Rav Nachman vav de shalem ketiahi. The vav in the Torah on this letter, there's a hole in it. It's cracked. So yeah, this we mentioned. This mentioned that this is what parshas? This is Pinchas. This is Pinchas. So the last time I've had Balkairas sometime when they're learning, it's in the first aliyah in Pinchas. The next time Pinchas comes around, look at the Sefer Torah. There is a crack in the letter Shalom in the Vav. There is a crack across. It's done on purpose because this Gemara that it's written Shalom with a Vav, but we want to read it as Shalem, so the Sefer puts a crack in the Vav. So the Balkaira.
So we can't also.
I'm assuming that this is a halacha mashmasina to write it such a way. So that's why I was here though when I was not here. I was a Balkara once did not know that, and he started getting very very nervous and he starts pointing and I'm like no it's okay. It's supposed to be like this. It's halacha mashmasina that's how you're supposed to write it. Okay, let's just do the Mishnah then we'll stop. The Mishnah now says the rules. The rules are: do you go by the mom or do you go by the dad? So it depends. If it's a complete holy marriage, no problem. Do you go by the mom or you go by the dad? So what's the halacha? You go by the dad. I'm not talking about whether you're Jewish. A regular marriage. Everyone's kosher, everyone's good. My dad's a Levi, but my mom's a Yisrael. Am I a Levi or am I a Yisrael? You go by the dad. So the Gemara says, halach achara zachar. You go by the dad. Whatever the dad is. Again, this is not regarding mamzer. This is, everyone's kosher. It's just, I'm trying to figure out, am I a Levi, Yisrael, or a Kohen? You go by the dad. Zakayhan Levi of Yisrael, shenislu Kohen Levi Yisrael. You go by the dad. Okay, that's the first category. Let's go to the second category. Chol makom sheish Kiddushin v'yesh avera. Let's go to the second category, which is, the Kiddushin is typhus, meaning, it's a marriage that there is an avera involved, but the b'diavad, it's a lav. So now who do I go by? So the answer is, you don't go by the mom or the dad, you go by the problem. I'll give you an example. Your dad's a mamzer, and your mom's not a mamzer, so they're not supposed to get married, but they did. But it's a typhus. Am I a mamzer? The answer is yes. That's where my dad's a mamzer. What if, opposite case, my dad's kosher, my mom's a mamzer? I'm a mamzer. What if my dad's a mamzer? The answer is, you don't go by mom or dad, you go by the problem. If one of your parents are a problem, you're a problem. That's the rule. That's when there's a lav, but the Kiddushin is typhus. So the Gemara says, Havlad halach achar pagam. You just follow the blemish. Whatever the blemish is goes to the kid. Ve'izazeh, what's an example? Amanol l'kayin gadol, right? Amanol l'kayin gadol, the kids. Exactly. The Kohen Gadol, if they get divorced, he's back to being a Kohen. The kid's a Chol, because he picks up the problem from the mom. Or Gerusha Chulitza Kohen Hedyet. Mamzeres in the sin Yisrael, Bas Yisrael Mamzer in the sin. A mamzer. If your dad's a mamzer, you're a mamzer. If your mom's a mamzer, you're a mamzer. You just go by the problem. And that's where the Kiddushin is typhus. Now, what if you have a marriage where the Kiddushin is not typhus? What if you have a woman who there's no Kiddushin typhus in this relationship, but there is Kiddushin typhus in another relationship? Meaning, a guy marries his mom. Now, his mom can marry other people, so she could have Kiddushin typhus with other people, but she cannot have Kiddushin typhus with her son. He marries a woman that she could have Kiddushin with other people, but not in this union. In other words, it's a chayvei krisus. What's the halacha? Mamzer. That's a mamzer. We paskin that a mamzer comes from a chayvei krisus. By the way, except for nida. Nida is the only one we do not say is a mamzer. If a guy marries a nida, although it is chayvei krisus, the child is not a mamzer. So we've had three categories, and the last category is, what if you have a person that Kiddushin is not typhus ever? And that's a guy. Right? A chayvei krisus is your mom someone marries his mom. So she can marry other people, Kiddushin typhus, she's Jewish. But for this union, there's no Kiddushin typhus. What about a guy? A guy can't marry anybody. So what's the halacha? You go by the mom. That if the mother's a guy, the child's a guy as well. Yeah? We'll stop there.